CargoWise Landside is deeply committed to revolutionizing landside logistics. With a complete enterprise system built for modern trucking and container drayage operators that includes proven drayage transportation management, digital rate and quote management, real-time container track and tracing, and on-demand truck, trailer, and container storage. Excellence in container drayage starts with the right software. Enhance transportation management, optimize shipment execution, and improve intermodal business operations with Trinium TMS, Draymaster, GeoStamp Track, and SecureSpace. To learn more, please visit cargowise.com/landside.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's episode of TPM Today, the September 26th episode, first one of fall. For some reason in TPM Today headquarters here in Alexandria, Virginia, it still feels like the end of summer. It's still really warm. I don't know when it's ever going to get cold. Maybe never. I don't know. In any case, really delighted you could join us today. Very excited for today's episode because it touches on a topic that everyone seems to want to hear about these days. I think I've been on the road a lot over the last month, and I've talked about today's subject, which is AI, sneak preview, in every single conversation. That's all anybody wants to hear about these days. So really excited to introduce today's guest in a second. Thank you to everyone tuning in. If this is your first episode, a great one to jump in on, because obviously this is the topic du jour, maybe outside of tariffs. If you're a longtime listener and viewer, thank you so much for your support. I really appreciate you tuning in every episode. Okay, I said it's the end of fall, or it's the start of fall. Start of fall means Inland Distribution Conference. So Inland 25 starts Monday morning. So if you haven't registered yet, you're really pushing it. Like, this is taking procrastination to a new level, but that's fine. There's no time that's too late to join. You can see a code that's scrolling along the bottom. If you haven't registered yet, take 10% off the registration fee and do it now. We have record attendance this year. We have a record number of shippers this year. We have an awesome, amazing program. I mean, we're hitting every single aspect of the domestic transportation market: truckload, LTL, drayage, domestic intermodal, international intermodal, ports, technology. Obviously, I have a whole sequence of programming lined up around things like appointment scheduling, automation in general, finance and factoring, and then capacity. How is technology enabling new ways to secure capacity for shippers? So you got to be there. Cargo theft, cross-border trade, everything. We're talking about everything. We have the CEO of UP who's going to be talking about the merger between UP and Norfolk Southern. Big news in the rail world. So if you're not there, please sign up. Join us in downtown Chicago. I promise you won't be sorry. All right. One other thing to note this week, Sunday, right before you come to Chicago, make sure you sign up for TPM 26 because early bird pricing ends on Sunday for that. So you're not going to get a better rate. You're not going to go like, hey, Eric, get me a good rate on TPM. I can't do any better than you're going to get if you sign up right now, taking advantage of early bird pricing and join literally 4,000 plus people in Long Beach next March to join the biggest container shipping event in the world. I don't think I need to say more. All right. Real quickly, news of the week. I think this dovetails nicely with the conversation I'm going to have with my guest. I wrote this week about an interesting phenomenon that's happening, and it's certainly not just in the logistics or transportation world. There's a theory that some of the tools that are out there for primarily for developers and programmers to use to assist or enhance their capacity and speed in coding, there's a theory that eventually this becomes so widespread that companies don't even need to invest in SaaS anymore. You literally can just spin up applications or products or features yourself, or companies can spin up features and sell them sort of in a more ad hoc way, and SaaS, or software as a service, starts to slowly lose its relevance in the world. So I wrote about this. I think one thing that's clear is there's no clarity on this. Like, different people have different views about where this is all going. And I included a few views. I can't include 100 in a story like this. There's just a few. But this is going to be an ongoing thing that we'll be tracking. And this will be specifically, we're going to discuss this issue at TPM and TPM Tech. So very interested. Read the story. Let me know what you think. I only touched the very surface of it in the story, and I touched even less of the surface of it right now. So go ahead and read the story and tell me what you think. With no further ado, super excited to bring on my guest this week. His name is Harish Abbot, and he's CEO of a company called Augment. If you've not heard of them, we're going to talk about what they do in a second. But you may have heard of Harish because he was a founder of another major company that you may have heard of. So Harish, thanks so much for joining TPM today. Really glad we can talk today.
Thank you for having me, Eric.
Yeah. So before we get into what Augment is, maybe give people a little background on yourself and kind of what I was alluding to, your previous life before starting Augment.
Yeah. So listen, I'm an engineer technologist who sort of, stumbled upon this world of logistics, supply chain at Amazon, helped build a lot of stuff, which is now fulfilled by Amazon. And since then I've built a few companies. My last one was called Deliverr, which was, think of as Amazon Prime for smaller, medium-sized merchants like Shopify merchants. We would sort of pool their inventory, forward deploy it, so they can offer 1 day and 2 day shipping, just like Amazon does to their customers. Yeah, so it's a little bit about me. Think of it me as a technologist who has been in the world of logistics and supply chain for a very long time.
Yeah, and just a little further background. So Deliverr gets acquired by Shopify.
Yeah.
Then that business gets sort of hived off and sold to Flexport, where it currently resides. Is that correct?
That's correct, right? All of Shopify Logistics is now part of Flexport, where Flexport now has both, freight forwarding, but then also both B2B and B2C distribution.
Yeah, cool. Well, that's a topic for another show, to go into all the things that happen there. But you have a very interesting new chapter. So what is Augment? What is the problem you're trying to solve? Why do you think that was a problem that needed to be solved?
Yeah, Augment is building AI for the logistics world. Our first product is Auggie. Auggie is like a remote teammate, no different than that. It's sort of, sits on your Slack, same channels, like the people are on, whether it's Slack or Microsoft Teams, emails, phone calls, text. But it can now take on your SOPs, the written documents that pretty much guide how work gets done in the physical world, and follow it to a T and do work on these SOPs. And so the work could be like, hey, I just want to track a shipment end to end. And if there are delays in it, I want people to know, maybe even call the right people or text or email them to get the latest updates, update my customer, update my vendors, update my warehouses. That's an example of a work. Or work like, hey, we want to collect all the delivery documents and make sure they are right, they're signed, they're not double brokered by any means. So all the tedious, repetitive, mundane work that occupies a big chunk of, I would say, desk operators day to day, Auggie can do that in parallel, 24/7 across thousands of loads and hundreds of workflows.
And you interact with this, I would presume, in natural language, right? So you're just prompting it, hey, can you find this load? Tell me this detail about this load. Can you tell me what exceptions, right? That's the way you would interact with it, correct?
That's exactly right. So when a company hires a new employee, you don't learn a new system to work with them.
Right.
You work with them naturally on the systems you already have. So We've designed Auggie the same way. One of the things with AI, Eric, is that it is the human AI loop, we think is extremely critical, right? AI is really good at certain things like working 24/7, doing sort of tedious, repetitive work, making calls, doing emails. What it's not good at is judgment, handling extenuating circumstances, understanding like the impact of a situation on your customers. And so having this human AI loop is critical, where AI should be able to reach to the right person on the channels they already are, and the people should be able to reach through AI on the channels they already are without having to learn a new system or having a new tab on their browsers.
Yeah. Give people a sense. So who do you work with? What are your customers? And are you working with mostly on the domestic side? Or are you also in the international side?
I think today we are mostly on the domestic side. Augment is sort of getting deployed to roughly about 35 billion of freight under management. So our current set of customers are, shippers, distributors, freight brokers, and then large fleets. And so those are the current set of customers that we are working with.
Got it. Do you have designs on the international side as well?
I think at some point next year, we would be going international. Naturally, as you know, supply chain is like a chain, right? It's a linked chain. And when you touch a node, it becomes interesting and almost important to touch the next node. Yep. And so, we're sort of working on the part of the chain that's domestic, but then it says, as we get closer to like freight forwarding, port stuff, the next chain out is international,
Yeah, I did a Journal of Commerce webcast yesterday on AI, and one of the topics that came up was how, if you say you're a shipper and you have a very strategic plan to build software or incorporate software like you're building, does it break down if all of your partners are not sort of at the same level, right? And so to your point, like, adding links to this chain so that everyone's kind of at somewhere approaching the same level. Like, obviously, I would imagine much of your work is taking, a company that's not automated at all and making it work with a company that is very sophisticated and very automated. But at a certain point, it's a lot easier if both companies are somewhat at the same level, right?
Yeah, I think it's a lot easier, but it's not needed. The beauty of AI is that it can meet you where you're at, right? Okay. So if you are really running your businesses on emails only, which you will find businesses who would run things on emails, like AI can meet you there. But if there is, sort of AI agents on both sides, now you are really elevating the collaboration they can do with each other, right? You're moving from what I call asynchronous communication. Emails is an asynchronous communication. Phone calls are synchronous, but also low bandwidth. There's not much you can transfer back and forth. It's very time consuming.
Yeah.
Would you move to a synchronous communication where two agents are constantly communicating with each other and making both the companies better off? I think that's sort of the word we are building towards as well.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I've been having lots of conversations about how that works in practice. So we can dig into that in a little bit. So I think one challenge that I'm seeing, as I mentioned in my intro, I'm getting asked to speak a lot about what I think about AI, which is in one sense hilarious because I have no computer science background. But I also talk to a lot of very intelligent people and people who are knowledgeable about this. So I sort of try to synthesize what all of these people are telling me. But how do you broach the subject with non-technical people in the logistics industry who obviously know this is sort of out there and it's something they need to understand to some level, maybe not as much as they think they need to know, but they need to be aware of what's out there? How do you broach that subject to those types of people?
Well, listen, I think first and foremost, whether it's applied in your business today or not, it is around us, right? Like if you are in one of those cities where Waymo is driving, you are taking an autonomous car, which is driven mostly by AI, right? Whether you know it or not, there's a good chance if you have kids, they're doing a good chunk of their homework. And, I think most people are now using Gemini or ChatGPT or Grok with like producing documents or the first level of presentation that they want to do. So people are starting to feel it, and there's enough awareness that, there is something more powerful here. I think the way we approach the subject is almost think of it as for today, think of it as an assistant or like an entry-level teammate that can converse with you. The difference is they can take on low consequence tasks off the plate of people in your business. You don't need to learn a new system. You can converse with them in English, and they don't take breaks. And now when they can take on these repetitive tasks that are consuming so much time of your folks, two things can happen to your business. One, your folks can now spend time on more creative problems, relationships. Two, your service levels to your customers will go up because you're not waiting for things to happen between 5 p.m. and 9 a.m. Those are happening as well all the time, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so your customers will start to see a much elevated level of customer service, and that should give you a competitive edge, right? So we treat it as almost like hiring an employee, like an entry-level employee that can work like hundreds of people behind the scene, and you don't really need to learn a new system to work with it.
So related to that, one of the discussions that I've had over the last month or so centered around this idea that, in a business, the higher your title and the more you're paid, the more you tend to like care and be engaged and work overtime and, really devote as much brain power to a project, right? Like A, you need to justify it. B, generally you care about things. Whereas entry-level people, not to say that they don't do a great job, but there's just less incentive, the less you're paid and the less interesting your job is. And the agentic kind of world sort of flips that on its head, where you have, and if you use an agent for that low-level entry work, they never get bored, they're never incentivized to work, and you have something that is providing a very consistent level, literally, as you said, 24 hours a day potentially. So I thought that was interesting. The other interesting thing I've heard, and I want to get your thoughts, is I had someone this week compare kind of an agentic workforce, quote unquote, to think of it the same way like a software company uses AWS, right, to scale to its needs at a given time. So it's not that you need a full workforce of 100 people 52 weeks a year. Maybe you have 2 weeks a year where there's a really crunch period and you actually need 3 times the number of FTEs you normally have to handle a problem, and you can scale it in that way. Is that a decent way to think about it?
Well, I think there's a parallel to that. Like our industry is very cyclical, as you know, right? Like we're going through, at least in freight, sort of a recession for the last few years, and hiring and letting people go is always very expensive. And one thing that hurts profitability of companies in this space is that through the cycles, the reactions on adding people or in some cases letting go people is a little bit delayed. And so your profitability really hurts in those times of change. Now with AI, you can actually manage to a much more predictable levels of workforce, and then let AI scale up or scale down the amount of work you're doing in the cycles you have. So it should help improve profitability of businesses, not just because you have now AI doing a fair bit of things, but also because you can handle the cycles, more reliably, more predictably, but without having to change your workforce, every time there's a recession or a boom.
Yeah, fair points. Our previous conversation that we had, you made a point that sort of stuck in my head, and I wanted to sort of highlight that for people. So we talked about, like, I think everyone's fairly familiar with customer service bots that sort of respond to an email, and obviously the rise more recently of voice agents that are very realistic, sound like you're having a conversation with an actual human and not a bot. You sort of made the point that those types of things are just essentially automating existing processes as opposed to using AI to change that process, change that interaction. And I think you alluded to it a little earlier in terms of synchronous versus asynchronous. How are you thinking about this from a product development, from an adoption standpoint, from changing the way the industry sort of approaches this stuff? Because there's an inbuilt thing of, I'm very familiar with the way something works, and if there's a way to make that better, great. I'm a little scared to like completely change this thing that I know works and could just be a little bit better.
Yeah, I think to me is like, for us to truly unleash the potential of AI, like it would be a tragedy if we just use AI to fill the existing processes, right? Let me just sort of give you an example of that. So in our business, as physical world, trucks run late. There's traffic congestion. Sometimes the trucks can break down, and let's say the truck's sort of running late, and traditionally today it is like, hey, you try to follow up on a truck every few hours or so, and after 5 p.m. it gets moved to an offshore team in Colombia or Mexico, and they then try to follow up on the truck between 5 to 9, right? Now, every time you're making a call to the truck driver, you're also bothering them. There's also risk. You don't want to be calling somebody driving a truck in the night. But if you think about, I'm just going to replace these calls by AI, and yes, you can do that. And Augie's today, making tens of thousands of calls a day. So yes, you can do that. But what would be better is that AI is looking at signals from where the truck was last, looking at traffic signals along the way, looking at congestion patterns along the way, understanding the ELD signals that are coming from the truck, and making a determination that, do I need to make the call, or I'm pretty certain that I don't need to make the call, and I can ascertain the location of the truck. And let's say there's a traffic delay in here. I think a good use of AI would be that, predict when the truck's ETA would be, and actually go and reset the appointments on the delivery or the pickup side without having to tell anyone through an email or a phone call that you need to do that, right? So now you've still accomplished the task of understanding where the truck is, reacting to it, letting everybody know where it is at, and reschedule the appointment, but also eliminated the calls, right? Clearly, the latter is a better word than the former, where you're just replacing human calls with AI calls. And that's a good start because it reduces the burden on humans. But I feel like if we don't reach the second half, where AI is eliminating the need for the calls, eliminating the need of the emails, then we're sort of losing, the potential or the power of AI, right? And this is one of sort of many, many examples around it. And so we're sort of always thinking of our product as, there is sort of a reactive process, like, hey, here's my current process, and I'm going to insert Auggie in all the places where humans are doing something. But we sometimes sit down with our customers saying, if you had an Auggie, how would you rethink your process?
No.
Right? And if you do that, I believe that a lot of the processes will get rethought and would be done better, right? And so that's, I think it's a really important piece for not just us, but I think almost all companies in the agentic world, is to not get short-sighted on replacing humans with AI, but using AI to rethink the business processes.
Yeah, it's a great thought. I was really struck by it the last time we talked. So thanks for walking the audience through that. I wanted to address something that I'm very curious about. And I have to admit, I've had talks with yourself and a few others who are working on sort of agentic technology, across systems, across different processes. And then, of course, I've talked to incumbent software providers that are building agents within their own software to better utilize the software. What do you say to someone who is suggesting that AI is better utilized, embedded within an existing piece of software versus what you're doing, sort of cutting across those different pieces of software?
Yeah, so I think my view here is that, like, if you just take a step back and you say, like, for all the work that gets done in a business, right, where does it get done? Well, there's work gets done in the system of record, and the system of record, understands the state of a business object, what has happened. People can edit to it, APIs can change it. But then there is work that gets done on emails. There's also work that gets done on your Slack or Microsoft Teams.
WhatsApp, text.
WhatsApp, text. Then there is work that gets done on just documents, Google Docs, Microsoft Documents.
Apple Notes.
People are collaborating on that, right? And so if you're really trying to build a new system of work, a way to rethink how work gets done, unless you have visibility and connectivity across all of these areas, you're sort of short-circuiting yourself, right? Because any one of these buckets, whether it's the system of record or Slack or emails or calls or WhatsApp or documents or Excel, is in of itself not fully representative of work. It's not in itself fully representative of the context behind the work, right? So what do? We ask the humans today to stitch the context across all of these systems, right? And we rely on the human's ability to connect the dots and build the context so that work gets done well. Well, if you really want AI to transform that, it needs to develop the same context, which means it needs to have visibility and ability to action across all of these areas and collaborate with humans on to get work done well, right? So I think the system of record is actually a very important and critical piece of software, and somewhat disagree, with this thesis that its importance is going to go down over time. But I think system of record, who is trying to think about building agentic work, if they can make the data and the context that is existing in their systems easily available so that collaboration across all of these different pieces where work gets done is easier, it would make that system of record even more sticky, right? Because now you have a single system of record. There's also permissioning in it, right? There is, like in a large organization, Eric, to your original point at the beginning, it's not just a system of record. It has permissions in it. Who can see what? Right. Who can analyze what? And in a large organization,
even within the organization,
even within the organization, right? And the larger the organization, the more critical and important those pieces are, right? And so that thing is not going away. That's very critical. These are very complex, large systems, and so I actually think that system of record companies who are trying to build agentic work is a good outcome as long as they keep the agentic work, whether through an MCP server or some kind of agent-to-agent communication, open and available for folks like us and others who are trying to build, I would call it system of work, right? Like a system of record and a system of work, and they both collaborate with each other to make companies extremely productive.
Yeah, very interesting. Well, more to come on that. That's something I need to dig into more because it's fascinating perspective on that. Maybe one real quick question, which is, we have like 2 minutes left and I have 2 questions left for you. So not enough time ever on this show, but you mentioned you're already serving multiple parties. You have ambitions to serve, like a broader base. Who's ultimately responsible for investing in automation? I mean, I know the easy answer is everybody, but I think the way the logistics world works is a lot of innovation gets de facto outsourced to 3PLs, right? Like a lot of shippers say, you take that burden on, develop this, maintain it, and I will maybe pay you, or maybe I won't pay you for all of that innovation. But it falls in the laps of 3PLs. Is it ultimately on the 3PLs to do this, or do shippers play a role in furthering this as well?
Well, I think the 3PLs are the first ones to adopt it because for them, the impact on the bottom line is the clearest, right? A big portion of their P&L is the people cost. And if you can impact that or make people more productive. So they are the first ones to adopt it. And we see that across the board. But I think for shippers, if you know what they have been, I think for them to then connect back into their supply chains and to really optimize not just the people part, but actually their business itself, the inventory levels, their production systems, their procurement systems, having the visibility between a shipper downstream and a shipper upstream radically changes the game there, right? And I think we've worked on visibility for a while. so far. But if you talk to any large shipper, like I was talking to a Fortune 50 shipper recently, and like a massive shipper who spent last 20 years on visibility, but they're still only 74% on visibility across their supply chain, upstream and downstream. But the 20 that they're not can cost enormous amounts of dollars in terms of misallocating inventory, having inventory levels. I think agentic word actually gives us all a hope that we can get to much closer to 98, 99% visibility levels that can then help transform these businesses as well, right? So I think the answer is everybody. I think the first guys who are adopting it is the 3PLs, but I think the shippers are going to be also thinking about actively because the prize is quite big.
Yeah. All right, last question. I ask this of every guest. Who's your favorite band or musician? And you have to tell me why.
Oh, okay. Well, if you look at my phone and my Spotify today, you might think I'm just the hugest Taylor Swift fan because my 10-year-old just never stops listening to her on my phone.
To who? Taylor Swift. Yeah. Okay.
But I think for me, well, I'm gonna date myself, but Pink Floyd, I think it's amazing.
I think you're my first guest to ever say that band.
Is that right? Well, I grew up in India, and at that time, and I think we probably got Pink Floyd maybe 10 years or 5 years later than the US. But their themes are always universal. Like you can listen to a song or you can be anywhere in the world and connect to the themes of, whether it's rebellion or, isolation or greed. Like they had very deep themes in their songs. And I always thought musically they broke some barriers. Like they took classic rock and then added lots of layered instruments on it.
Yeah.
Super cool. So anyways, I love it.
Pink Floyd's a good one.
Yeah.
Well, Harish, thank you so much. Really, really fascinating conversation. I feel like we barely got going here, but really appreciate it. And what's the best way for people to reach you?
So I think for Augment is goaugment.com, and I'm on LinkedIn and X, so you can reach out, search for my name. But thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for being here. Have a great weekend. All right, quick. I'm way late. Sorry, Nicole. Dad joke of the week time. We're not doing the sound effects this week. I gotta do this silent. There we go. All right. I used to have a fear of speed bumps, but I'm slowly getting over it. Thanks so much to Harish. Awesome conversation. Really, really insightful guy. Really kind of next level thinker on this stuff. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. Thank you to Nicole and the Let's Talk Supply Chain team. Register for Inland. Register for TPM. I promise you won't be sorry. I'll see you everybody in Chicago next week. Can't wait. Have a great weekend, everyone.